Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to equip you with a critical thinking toolkit so you can act as a veritable knowledge detective. Think of your brain as the ultimate investigative tool. Every single day, you are completely bombarded with claims, facts, and opinions, right? Wild rumors in the hallway, viral takes on social media, intense debates while hanging out with friends. But how do you actually sort the solid facts from pure fiction? Well, we're going to solve that right now by decoding the foundational sources of truth. So, let's dive right into this mystery. Where do your opinions actually come from? It sounds like a simple question, but it's really the cornerstone of all critical thinking. Every opinion you have is essentially an argument resting on certain premises or starting points. But how do we know if those starting premises are actually true? Look at it this way. If you build a house on a shaky foundation, the whole thing comes crashing down. The exact same goes for your opinions. We've got to figure out where the building blocks of our thoughts actually originate. We can figure this out by using what we call the four-fingertip rule, which represents the four foundational sources of human knowledge. Basically, everything you actually know to be a fact comes from one of four slices: observation, experience, collective accounts, or logical reasoning. If a claim doesn't fit neatly into one of these categories, then it's not a verified fact. It's just a guess, an assumption, or a belief. Let's break these down one by one, using some simple analogies to really lock the concepts in. All right, let's kick things off with section 1 and 2, observation and direct experience. This is all about using your senses and interacting with reality. Let's start with our absolute most direct evidence, which is observation. This simply means noticing your surroundings, using your five senses, or reading firsthand reports of what other people have seen or heard. Picture yourself as a student sitting in a science lab, watching a chemical reaction completely bubble over and violently change color. Your eyes are seeing that bright green shift. Your nose smells that sharp sulfuric gas. That is pure observation. It is your immediate, undeniable contact with material reality. Now, how does that differ from experience? Well, experience deepens observation through actual interaction. Think about basketball. You can observe a game from the bleachers and easily learn the rules. But experiencing it, getting out on the court, feeling the heavy weight of the ball, missing a shot, and realizing that physical effort produces athletic skills, that takes your knowledge to a completely different level. The same goes for fire. Observing it tells you it's bright and crackling, sure, but experiencing it by getting a little too close teaches you the hard truth that it burns. Experimentation is really just this experience, but carefully controlled. Moving right along to section 3, collective accounts. This is how we learn beyond our own lifespan. Here's the catch, though. Since you and I can't personally experience or observe everything in the universe, we have to turn to the case files. This source allows us to extend our knowledge far beyond our own short lives by aggregating the observations and experiences of others throughout history. Imagine trying to pass a history exam by only writing about things you've personally lived through. Unless you're a centuries-old vampire, you wouldn't get very far. Instead, you rely on the massive, shared group project of humanity: textbooks, datasets, archives, and research studies. It's literally the compiled evidence of millions of other knowledge detectives. And that brings us to section 4, the power of logic, or how we connect the clues. This is where it gets really fun. Logic itself doesn't actually generate raw data. Instead, it's the tool you use to organize, test, and connect all those clues you've gathered from the first 3 sources. Let's break down the 3 main types of logic. We'll start with inductive reasoning, which means moving from specific observations to general conclusions. Think of inductive reasoning kind of like a student journalism project. Let's say you survey 20 different English teachers at your school about why students struggle with essays, and 19 of them tell you it's because students don't outline their work. You take that specific sample size and you draw a general pattern or conclusion. A major reason students struggle with essays is a lack of outlining. The larger and more representative your sample is, the stronger your inductive conclusion becomes. Next up, we've got deductive reasoning. This is the exact opposite of inductive. Instead of moving from specific to general, you're moving from general principles down to specific conclusions. Deductive reasoning is incredibly powerful because if your starting premises are true and your structure is valid, your conclusion is absolutely guaranteed to be true. It works just like a strict mathematical equation. Take a look at these steps. Step 1, the general rule: all humans are mortal. Step 2, a specific data point: Michael is a human. Step 3, the conclusion: therefore, Michael is mortal. If the general rule applies, the specific result naturally follows. It is completely foolproof as long as your starting facts are actually correct. Then we have the final type, abductive reasoning. This is what guides our inquiry when we just don't have absolute certainty. It's an educated, contextual guess operating under uncertainty. In the real world, you rarely have all the facts perfectly laid out for you, right? Abductive reasoning is what you use when you need to carefully select the most plausible explanation given the limited information you actually have. Let's use a super simple analogy for this. If you walk into a room and see a marble on the floor right next to a full jar of marbles sitting on a table, your smartest, most contextual guess is that the marble fell out of that jar. You didn't observe it fall, so you can't be 100% sure. Maybe someone brought a marble from outside and dropped it there. But abduction tells you the jar is the most likely culprit. It's exactly like seeing a friend with cookie crumbs all over their shirt and guessing they just ate a cookie. It doesn't guarantee truth, but it confidently guides your investigation. So, the absolute most crucial point here is that whenever you encounter a new claim, whether it's a wild rumor in the hallway, a statistic in a textbook, or a really bold statement on the news, you must automatically ask yourself, which source does it come from? Are they using observation, experience, collective data, or logic? To really be a true knowledge detective, you've got to draw a stark line in the sand. Emotions, fantasy, intuition, and tradition, they are incredibly valuable for art, for creativity, and finding personal meaning in life. But they are absolutely not sources of factual knowledge. I mean, you wouldn't use a paintbrush to measure the length of a piece of wood, just like you wouldn't use how you feel about a math problem to find the actual answer. They might inspire you to ask a question, but they cannot justify a factual conclusion. And here is why this matters so deeply. If we refuse to trace claims back to their real foundations, if we let how we feel about something completely dictate what we think is true, our opinions stop being investigative. They just harden into rigid dogma. You stop being a detective and start acting like a brick wall. It's like refusing to admit you lost a game even when the scoreboard is right in front of you, simply because the score challenges your feelings. There's a great quote here that perfectly summarizes our explainer today. Knowledge does not emerge from conviction, it emerges from contact with reality, tested through reason. True critical thinking means refusing to accept conclusions built on imaginary foundations. Just because you believe something really, really strongly, that's conviction, that doesn't make it true. Truth requires contact with reality, processed through the logical tools we just explored. So I want to leave you with a final thought to investigate on your own. Take a hard look at your strongest opinions, the things you argue about most passionately. Ask yourself, which of the 4 tools actually built them? Are they grounded in observation, experience, data, and logic? Or are they just castles in the sky built on emotion? Keep those detective skills sharp. Use the 4 sources to test reality, and you'll navigate the world with a whole lot more clarity. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.